Good afternoon, everybody. Could you kindly get seated? We would like to start our evening's events. Welcome, everybody, to our opening, our very first international symposium on regenerative agriculture. We're going to start off with this young lady here who's going to sing our national anthem. Okay? If everybody could join in and help her also, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will be singing the national anthem. O land of the free by the Carib Sea, our manhood we pledge to thy liberty. No tyrants or lingers, despots must flee this shrine. Will heaven of democracy, the blood of first sight which hallows the sun, brought freedom from slavery, oppression's rule. By the might of truth and the grace of God, no longer shall we be hearers of wood. Arise, ye sons of the Baymen's clan, put on your armors, clear the land, drive us the tyrants, let despots flee. Land of the free by the Carib Sea, nature has blessed it, we welcome to our mountains and valleys where prairies yours, our fathers and Baymans, valiants and bold through val. In vain of this heritage hold, from Prawn Rio Hondo to Old Sarsoon, to Coral Isle over Blue Lagoon. Keep watch with the angel, the stars and moon, for freedom comes tomorrow's noon. Arise, ye sons of the Baymen's clan, put on your armors, clear the land, drive us the tyrants, let despots flee. Land of the free by the Carib Sea.
Thank you. Now, let us all join in the national prayer, please. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let your light of your divine wisdom direct their plans and endeavors, so that with your help we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in the union and in peace, which the Lord itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to that eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen. Amen. I just want to make a very quick announcement. We have two young ladies here, the obispos. They're from Freetown, Sibun. If anybody is coming from Belize City tomorrow, they need a ride here. They would like to attend, and they don't have a ride. Tomorrow and the day after. If anybody is coming from that direction, or you know anybody, it's these two ladies over here, two sisters. They need a ride here, please, just in case somebody is coming. So now we're going to call upon Ursulis Ahoris. and she's going to give us the official introduction to everything.
Muchas gracias. All right. Hi. Good afternoon. How is everyone doing? All right. I was told I'm going to give the official introduction to everything. I don't think I can do that. Actually, I don't think I can give official introductions to many things because I think we got such an amazing group of local and international speakers here that it would take me like 4 hours to basically cover all the topics and everything that they're going to be talking about. But it's a good thing that, our local organizers have put together those wonderful agendas. So if you don't have the program, make sure you pick up one. They're at the box. So you're aware of everything that we're going to be covering this evening, tomorrow, and the following day. Just briefly, let me give you an introduction about Regeneration International. You must be thinking, well, what are this group of people doing here in Belize, and how, and what's the purpose of this? So Regeneration International was founded in 2014 during the New York City Climate Change March. There we were aware that the numbers that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, was going to be given this year were under a threshold, were a minimum, and that the urgency of putting together agriculture and climate change was way more vital and urgent than what we thought then. In 2014, a bunch of soil scientists, farmers, producers, activists, corporations, consumer rights activists got together and they decided that this was a global challenge, climate change and agriculture, that as a global challenge, what it needed was global solutions, and that we had to stop thinking in silos. That we had to stop thinking about, this is my piece of land, this is my area of expertise, and that communication was crucial. So once we realized that, in 2015, in Costa Rica, with about 102 people, we launched what was the beginning of Regeneration International. Now, Regeneration has many ways to manifest itself. It's got a number of practices and a number of techniques that make part of Regeneration. I won't go deep into them because all of our speakers today are going to be tapping on some of those aspects that make and do part of what Regeneration is. But Regeneration is not more than just an umbrella, a global term to put together our ecology, to put together permaculture, biointensive, land management, and holistic management practices as well. Everyone that is here, in one way or another, is an expert in agriculture, so I won't get deep into that, but I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank the Regeneration Belize team. This was absolutely by chance that 1 year ago, yeah, please, big clap. So can we have the Regeneration Belize please stand up? I mean, if you girls can. Dottie, Beth, Sally, where are you? Well, look at that. You see? That's a committed team that we have, fixing the stage. So it was by mere chance that they met Andre, Regi, Ronnie, a couple of Regeneration International board members at the Acres Conference. And about 4 months after that, they made, yes, right, yes, sorry. Ryan as well. Hi, well, that's okay. Me too, but they put me upstage, so I had to do something. So months after that, Ricardo Romero from Sustainable Harvest is part of the network of Regeneration International, and myself, there you go, Ricardo, he's also shy. We came here in February and we met with this incredible group of very determined, strong, well-connected, I'm going to use the word stubborn. Can I use that? Yeah? Women who put us all to work. And the result of their work is this. Right now, we're not all here. Tomorrow and the following day, we're going to have the most important people here, the farmers, the producers. And the idea of these days is we're here to learn, we're here to exchange. The purpose of Regeneration International is to connect and showcase best practices. We work at an international level and we work at a local level. Those two levels have to feed each other and coexist. If we don't put agriculture into the international policy, if we don't put agriculture, regenerative agriculture, as a priority for every single government in this world, then the indexes that we're hearing from the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which says basically we've only got 12 years to go before we face catastrophe, that's going to happen faster than we think. So what we're going to be hearing these 3 days is solutions. All of you guys here, and ladies, are working on solutions. We know that there are solutions that exist to not only mitigate and adapt in facing climate change, but also to reverse it. Those solutions are shovel-ready. People are doing that. We know how to do it, so let's connect, let's talk to each other, and make the ones that are up there here, that those here in Belize and around the globe know how to do it. So they just need to listen. So in that, with that, I think, since we're running a little bit late on time, I'm going to pass the word to those who are going to be talking about those shovel-ready solutions and talk about a little bit what they're doing in each of their countries. I don't know if we have any other logistics announcements, Santiago? No? Bueno, adelante.
No more logistics. Gracias.
Gracias.
So next up, we have Dr. Alvaro Zapata. Where is Dr. Alvaro Zapata? And he comes to us all the way from Colombia.
Good afternoon. I am very, very glad to be here. It's my first time in Belize, and I hope it's not going to be the last one. That's my name. That's the organization I work for, CIPAP. I am part of CIPAT. I'm going to talk a little bit about our organization. The objective of our work is to increase cattle production, but not just to increase cattle production. How is very, very important. In a sustainable way. It's very important for us to do that in a sustainable way. And we are going to talk a little bit. I'm going to present a quick overview about our work related to it. Sustainable means biodiversity, but sustainable means milk, beef production, but it means too money. And for us, it's very clear that a system to be sustainable must produce money, must produce a good income. CIPAP is an NGO, non-governmental organization, was created in 1986 in Cali, Colombia. Is the Center for Research on Sustainable Agriculture. We do research, we do extension services, and our idea is to promote sustainable production. We have a very, very old, was created almost 25 years ago, page in internet, www.cipat.org.co, where you are going to have a lot of information, books, booklets about our work. We work in many countries. Some images of our work in Nicaragua some years ago, planting leucaena, other systems, all in the sustainable agriculture. It was a visit from farmers from Mexico, farmers from Brazil. Is an important part of our work. Farmers in Colombia, and our main project at the moment in the last years is this one, mainstreaming biodiversity in sustainable cattle ranching. We publish, part of our work is to promote the good ideas and to show the bad ones, not to repeat them. It's a book about our experience in Nicaragua, in other parts of Nicaragua, in Colombia. Okay. Sustainable livestock. Is it possible? That's the question. We are now under fire from many different spots. Yeah, it's possible. I'm going to show that it's possible to have a sustainable livestock production. Our starting point, cattle production system based only on grasses is in the wrong place. And cattle production has been grasses, just grasses. But we have to acknowledge that this system is in the wrong place. This is normal cattle ranching, just grass. Nicaragua, Brazil, just grasses. Mexico, just grasses. Colombia, Brazil. We have to acknowledge that the traditional cattle production system has been based on the destruction of the forest and on the depletion of our natural resources. Brazil, and a system that has considered the tree as an enemy. That's an important point for our work. The traditional way of cattle production has considered trees as an enemy, and as a result, we get this kind of landscapes. Brazil, Amazonia, Caribe of Colombia, many examples. And the question is that the dry season, or is the result of the dry season, or is the result of the human activity? We are going to talk a little bit about that. We must remember the original ecosystem. Most tropical Latin America was a forest. And in a forest, the soil is very well protected. The sun doesn't heat the naked soil. The soil is protected by the trees, by the leaves. The humidity is well preserved. Rain is coming in a soft way in the forest. This is the forest. We have very strong roots, but almost overnight, we turned that from forest to a landscape of grasses, to a monoculture of grasses. It was a process almost overnight. We cleared the forest, we burned it, and in a very short period of time, depending on the soil fertility, depending on the topography, we get landscapes like that one. A soil that now is with very low fertility, is 8, 12 hours a day exposed to the rays of the sun, erosion, all those things that you know very well. The good news is we can change that. Things can change, las cosas pueden cambiar. And a tool for our work is that we call silvopastoral systems. I'm going to explain very quickly what silvopastoral systems. Silvopastoral systems is a part of agroforestry. Many definitions, just one, is an efficient and sustainable cattle production based on the integration of trees and grasses. Just a short definition, efficient production based on the association of cattle, of course, grasses and trees. And we must remark, we are talking about many trees. We are not talking just about a few trees in a large area of grassland. For example, here you can see a very nice picture, but that's not a silvopastoral system. That's just a tree in a paddock, a tree in a pasture. When we talk about silvopastoral systems, we are talking about many trees. Some examples: grassland, grasses, cows, and trees. Some pictures, farms with farmers we work with in Colombia for more than 20 years. Just general information about our approach. Our approach is an efficient system of production on an environment that mimics as much as possible the characteristics of the original forest. We are not going to create the original forest, but our objective is to mimic as much as possible the characteristics of the original forest. What I am talking about, full sun hitting the naked soil, not. We don't want that. Uncovered soils, we don't want that. We want a lot of leaf litter to protect the soil, nutrients, and strong roots with their capacity to take nutrients from down in the soil, and biodiversity, different grasses, but different trees, not just one species of trees. And when we talk about silvopastoral systems, again, it's not just few trees. It's not something like this. It's not something like this. It has to be much more. Our objective is to recover the cover of our soil. When we talk about silvopastoral systems, there are many different options. We have intensive silvopastoral systems, and we have other systems that I'm going to present very quickly. Some of them are very intensive. This system, Leucaena, Leucena intensive silvopastoral system, is a very productive system where Leucaena is planted in a very high densities. Here you can see some examples of the intensive silvopastoral system with Leucaena. It's a farm close to Cali, grasses, Leucaena, medium-sized trees, big trees, and even palms. It's just some kind of jungle, but it's a jungle very productive. This farm is very productive in terms of biodiversity, but it's very productive in terms of milk and money. It's a farm that the stocking rate is 4.3 heads per hectare, about 15,000 kilograms of milk per hectare per year. I'm not talking just about biodiversity. I'm talking about production and about income, and we can integrate all those things through those systems. Another intensive silvopastoral system, this one is with Botón de Oro. Botón de Oro, the Latin name is Tithonia diversifolia. It's a plant of the family of the sunflower. The flower is very similar to one of the sunflower. It's another intensive silvopastoral system. Some images of this, and other silvopastoral system that we don't call intensive, is not intensive, is like this one, when we have grasses and we have many trees. We call it scattered trees. Scattered trees in pasture land. Some examples, you can imagine the benefits in terms of biodiversity, soil protection, and soil fertility. The farm I just showing is planted with pasture and with Inga trees. Inga is a really great tree in terms of in soil fertilization. There are many species of Inga. There are just some few ones. This is the same farm. You can see the grasses, the cattle, and the Inga trees. And I'm going to show the same farm. We took this satellite picture in 2003. You can see the farm. The farm was, at that moment, was just grass, almost nothing of trees. And now, let's see the same farm in 2014. Unfortunately, it's too light here, but now the farm is like a forest. It's like a jungle, but it's a very productive. This farm is about 3.5 heads per hectare without any chemical fertilization. I am a witness of that. During 18 years, no use of chemical fertilization in that farm. Lead fences are part of our work. These kind of fences don't have any sense, neither economical nor biological, when we could have fences like this one that we call leaf fences. In addition to all other benefits, these fences are capturing carbon, are fighting against climate change. Those are some examples of our work. We can produce wood in those leaf fences. Very quickly, it's not just planting trees. We require rotational grazing. It's not possible to talk about sustainable livestock without rotational grazing. Rotational grazing is absolutely necessary for sustainable livestock. Tomorrow, I'm going to have some more time to expand a little bit about these ideas. Rotational grazing. Cattle in this intensive silvopastoral system, cattle is here, cattle was here, and next day or next 2 or 3 days is going to be in this plot and then in this other plot. Rotational grazing is absolutely necessary for our work. Trees, we need trees, but of course trees require management. At some moment, even that tree inga that I love so much is going to produce too much shade. But the idea is not to cut the tree. The idea is to prune the tree, is to cut branches, management of the trees. Silvopastoral system. The key of silvopastoral system is tree management. And tree management, the picture you can get an idea about the meaning. A tree in a livestock farm, in a cattle farm, we could consider that a bad tree. It produces too much shade. Grass is not going to grow here. Our task is just to do some management. This is the same tree with proper management. Now, it's good for the tree, it's good for the soil, it's good for grass production. Just a short summary. Trees with good establishment, with good management, preserve and enhance soil fertility. Soil fertility means increase grass production, and increase grass production means increase milk and beef. But not just that. With trees, we can get more money, and climate change is our enemy. With trees, we are going to be more resilient to climate change, and with trees, we are going to fight climate change. Our main tool, you have seen, is to work together with nature, not against nature. That is the work we've been carrying out for many years. We need now to work with nature, and by sure the results are going to be for environment, for biodiversity, for cattle, for our pockets, and for all the planet. Just a quick overview of a sustainable livestock and the work carried out by CPAP and all our team. Thanks a lot. I'm going to be the next days. Tomorrow I have some more time to expand a little bit the ideas, how to do these things. And on Thursday again, I'm going to have a presentation. Thanks to Regeneration Natural for the invitation, and thanks to you.
So the principles of agro-silvopastoral systems also apply to the other systems that we'll be discussing throughout the other 2 days, which are the food forests and row crops in general, banana plantations, sugar plantations, all the industries we have, all share the same limitations, and they can all be enhanced with these same principles and very similar principles. Up next, we have our friends from Guatemala, Mr. Marroquin, who is going to be talking about us about regenerative poultry management. I know there's many efforts right now countrywide for backyard poultry systems, and Belize is one of those countries that has so much natural heritage with growing poultry. Our local chickens, our ducks, our Muscovy ducks, which are native to this part of the world, all play an important part in this. So, Mr. Marroquin, we're happy to have you here all the way from Guatemala.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to do the full presentation on poultry today. What I will do is set the stage for how the engineering processes, the ancient knowledge, the traditional knowledge, the community engagement, the ecosystem that we have built behind regenerative poultry or poultry-centered regenerative design has allowed us to capture the imagination of hundreds and hundreds of communities up to now, and how, because of that, and I am not coming from Guatemala, by the way, I live in Minnesota, and our main operation is out of Northfield, just 1 hour south of the Twin Cities. So what I will do then is display in general strokes how this way of thinking, regenerative thinking, not as a practice. Regenerative is not about practices, is a way of thinking and a way of doing things. And so regenerative can involve a lot of things that basically restore the ecological value, the economic return, and the social cohesiveness of a landscape. And so we picked poultry because fundamentally to regenerate a space ecologically, you have to start with animals. Animals technically are, in the global context, the biodigester of Earth, is the gut system. Every one of you, if you're healthy, you are carrying over 1 trillion bacteria in your gut. And that bacteria, about 2.5 pounds of it, that bacteria is responsible for turning what you eat, eggs and the chicken that you eat, and the carrots and the pineapples and all of that. That bacteria turns that pineapple into nutrients that your body can absorb. Without that bacteria, you're nobody. You have to get an IV and put it directly into your brain, into your veins. The nutrients already processed. So the animals, same way as that bacteria in our gut is responsible for our ecosystem and our health, animals are responsible for the whole ecosystem transformation of energy, from non-edible to absorbable by plants and everything else. Just the nitrogen put in the soil means nothing to a tree. It has to go through a biodigestive process. It can happen in the soil only if it's healthy and it has bacteria, fungi, and all these other things which are responsible for the digestive process. So if we're going to start with animals and we're going to start with social impact, engagement of people, nothing beats the chicken, literally. The chicken is already across the world. You can put it into any ecology, especially in tropical ecosystems, and it won't destroy much. If you are not a good farmer, like Alvaro was saying, you have to be very smart to do cattle right. Otherwise, with cattle, you can destroy an ecosystem very, very fast. And we have seen it around here, northern Guatemala, everywhere. You can destroy an ecology before you blink with cattle or with pigs or with other things like that. Well, chickens are very gentle. You can start very small. You can go in stepping stones. You can engage. Every small farmer in the world can do chicken, and everybody can do it at small scale or at large scale. And so in that context, from A to Z, chicken is ecologically really resilient. It's already crossed the world. It's already adapted to almost every ecology in the world. But it's also a jungle animal. It thrives under forests. So for our tropical climates, there is nothing more appropriate than to restore the forest while becoming leaders in regenerative poultry. So to give you some little facts about what Belize can do, and tomorrow we'll go into detail on how we actually do this. Belize, different from other countries because of its size, and as you know, it still holds 70% of the total landscape is still forest. It's only a small part of it that has been destroyed. So it still holds a strategic global position that is uncomparable to almost any other country. Just to the west, Petén, which is the center of the rainforest of Guatemala, it's already down to 2% of the total original forest. That ecology has been destroyed. It's a very stupid way to manage the rainforest. Belize, on the other hand, again, still has a tremendous amount of its natural resources, and it gives it a very strong global competitive advantage if appropriately utilized going forward. But if we were to think about all of that in the context of poultry, poultry is natural to that ecosystem. You will find wild chickens. I don't know if you call them chachalacas here. That's what we call them in the northern rainforest because of the way they sing in the mornings, especially. Way worse than roosters. I mean, believe me, they will wake you up way, way faster, and they don't stop. They are relentless. But those are our version of wild chickens. Most of the species have already adapted to wild chickens on the undergrowth, which means that from an evolutionary perspective, they're already ready to transform energy and to become biodigesters of everything flowing around. Now, turkey, also critical in the poultry sector, is also native to our ecologies. And so on we could go. It's really fascinating to see the wealth, the amount of wealth we are sitting on as long as we understand the foundational principle that we as farmers, we are not producers of anything. We don't produce anything. Alvaro doesn't produce cattle. I don't produce carrots. You don't produce chickens. You don't produce corn. Nobody does. Nature does. And the way nature does it is by taking unedible energy in one end of the spectrum and transforming it through biological, chemical, and physical processes into edible energy on the other side, whether you call that cattle, or you call it pigs, or you call it eggs or chickens, it doesn't matter to nature. It's the end result of an energy transformation process. And that energy transformation process has been perfected over billions of years to a point when we start messing with it, all we are doing is turning that beautiful, absolutely amazing process of efficient energy transformation into a lesser way of managing energy. So in short, we are simply energy managers. And to the extent that we focus on managing energy, we will bring it back from the atmosphere, we'll put it back in the soil where it belongs, and we will get better returns economically, ecologically, we'll restore the landscape, and socially we'll be healthier, because when we destroy the ecology, we also destroy our spiritual connection to it, and with it comes our own humanity. That's why we are focused on poultry. So you thought we grow chickens, right? Well, no, we don't do chickens. We do regenerative design and regenerative thinking, because regenerative agriculture is not about practices, it's about how you think about energy cycles. So in Belize, for example, you got a really interesting case. As I said, not only do you still have 70% of the natural forestry systems here, but even those places where the forest has been destroyed in exchange for lesser productive systems like corn, soybeans, cattle, and things like that, you still don't have it completely degenerated. It can very quickly, and especially in this climate, within a year, regenerate very rapidly. Within 3 or 5 years, you won't even know it was there, like Alvaro described before. But also, you know, this country's poultry system specifically is still very small, just around 110 million US dollars, the whole industry. It's got about 190 broiler producers, very tiny, 180 table egg producers. You got 16 broiler breeders and only 1 egg layer breeder company here. Very easy. You just have to change 1 operation instead of 100 of them already entrenched and established and unable to change. The other thing is that poultry is 80% of the total meat that is consumed in Belize. 80%. Cattle, goats, sheep, and pigs share the other 20%, but poultry is king in this country. Now, poultry is also globally a very aggressive, fully integrated, very competitive industry. So Belize cannot think of itself as a future producer of conventional poultry. You don't have the ecology for it to begin with. So the only way for Belize to make its poultry industry the best in the world, the one that shines and sets an example for future generations and puts Belize in the global map, is through regenerative poultry. Simply, I mean, in that sector. Because this is not a cattle country. This is a rainforest. And the rainforest is symbiotic to the poultry. And you can launch egg laying, meat poultry, broilers, turkey, and so on the basis of the natural ecological infrastructure that already exists and that wants to be here. So, but it's also a huge economic and employment opportunity. Right now, for example, the current industry employs 2,500 people. We could employ close to 10 to 15,000 people if we flip just what's in the place today and flip it into regenerative. And why is that possible? Because the poultry in a regenerative design is only the beginning of the energy transformation process. Poultry is a jungle animal. So it goes on the bottom of the forest, as you will know if you just go out into the forest and observe it. Above it, it's up to 8 to 10 strata, layers of productivity, where you can put everything from oranges, avocados, timber products, zapotes, chico zapotes, all of the species that you see out there, which is well over 500 of them, will do well with the poultry in the bottom. And it's already a $110 million industry. Transforming poultry in this country is very, very easy if we just want to do it. And that's the key. Want to do it and have the will, and especially have the guts to do it, because the poultry industry is already fully, taking over the world, in other words, to follow the chicken around the world. Now, within this sector, Belize, the Belizean poultry industry already consumes 80.5 million pounds of yellow corn. That's 22 million Belizean dollars of yellow corn. And 16 million pounds of sorghum, which is $3.8 million Belizean dollars worth of that crop as well. That crop can also be done in alley cropping systems, so deforestation doesn't have to be done completely, and can be fully fertilized with the manure coming out of the poultry production system. So you can eliminate, and we have done this already, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, we can also eliminate all the inputs associated with producing the grain for the poultry itself. That is what we call symbiosis, and it's also part of that energy transformation equation that is very, very easy to integrate with poultry. Now, in total, Belize only has $55 million worth of infrastructure investments throughout the supply chain, all the way from farms, all the way to processing, distribution, warehousing, and all of that, which makes it a very small industry, yet 80% of the total meat production in this country. So tomorrow and the day after, we're going to go through the specific science, the management, the strategic framework for how we can take one sector in a country where there is a lot of need for wealth creation, employment, and has an incredibly resilient and regenerative landscape. And we will turn poultry into one of the things that we'll explain how regenerative poultry can turn Belize into a shining star all across the world. It's the only country that I have analyzed that actually meets all of the criteria for becoming the country that changed poultry and became a net exporter of poultry-related products, such as cocoa, such as chico zapotes, such as macadamias, such as other products that will grow naturally above the poultry. So with that, I'll leave you to chew on that, and then tomorrow we'll get into the specifics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there you go. We got to think poultry, but with a different mindset. So up next we have Andre Lou.
Just like to say I'm really pleased to be here in Belize, and it is my first time here. I've been wanting to come here for a long time. I think you guys have got an incredible country, and it actually reminds me very much of where I live in Australia, because where I live we have the Great Barrier Reef. You have the second largest barrier reef, and it's wet tropical like this with tropical rainforest. Anyway, and I'd like to also thank the organisers, because I think they've done a lot of work and brought together what I believe is a fantastic program. So let's make sure that the technology works. Okay. Firstly, a little bit more about us, Regeneration International. As Celia gave you an overview. That's our mission statement there, and it's to promote, facilitate, and accelerate global transition to regenerative farming, land management, and food systems. One of the really important issues for us is to talk about farming and food systems. That we need to connect it. We need to connect farmers and consumers and communities. And a really important one for us is also working at community level. It's not just about, we're working in fields with agronomy. We're talking about whole systems of people and looking at things at a social, ecological, and economic way. We've talked about increasing soil carbon, and tomorrow I'll talk about how to build topsoils and the multiple benefits. But I want to talk about one of the really important issues, because you've heard Celia mention how we actually came out of the New York climate change meeting in March, in September 2014, that the United Nations put together. And we realised how important farming is with climate change. Now, in 2016, for the first time in 3.5 million years, the world reached 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide. Now, that should have been headlines around the world. Why? Because when scientists have actually looked at, like I said, the last time there was that level of carbon dioxide, that's 3.5 million years ago. We weren't a species then. We're a species maybe 200,000 years old. The last time that the world had those levels, the temperatures were 16 degrees Celsius higher. So I just want to imagine today, it's been around 30. How would you feel about 46 degrees average days? What do you think that will do to our ecosystems? It'll cause mass extinction. The sea levels were 20 to 30 metres higher. For this country, not just losing Belize City, you're going to lose about half of the country, or the lowland areas will disappear. Countries like Bangladesh will disappear, the Netherlands, most of Denmark, nearly every major coastal city. We're actually looking at some of the estimates now of around 1 billion climate change refugees by 2050. The real critical issue here is that despite Paris, our carbon dioxide levels are going up by more than 2 parts per million every year. Things aren't getting better, they are getting worse. What I want to get across, and this is a really important issue so people can understand what is happening at the moment. At the moment, we're a bit more than 1 degree warmer than we were in the days of the Industrial Revolution. And that's 1 degree in the atmosphere and 1 degree in the sea. Think about the amount of energy that is needed to heat this planet up, all the ocean waters, all the atmosphere by 1 degree average. And that is the energy equivalent of billions, not millions, billions of atomic bombs. And I want to use that violent metaphor for you to understand that, people say, 1 degree isn't much. What does it matter? If you start thinking about it as the energy required to do 1 degree, that energy is actually violently fueling our weather systems. And this is why weather and climate is changing. And, we are in climate change. So when we look at hurricanes, we are getting these massive hurricanes. In Asia, they're called typhoons. In my part of the world, they're called cyclones. You know, we had one that was 1,000 kilometres across, took out all the electricity and phone lines for 1,000 kilometres. The people in the centre of it were you know, their houses and farms were just smashed to bits. There are people, friends of mine, who never went back to farming afterwards. Because it's in Australia, it doesn't make the news as, you know, the equivalent when it happens in Alabama or in the Carolinas. The biggest ever recorded one actually happened last month in the Marianas. It's a little island there. It wiped it off the face of the planet, but because it's a little island in the Pacific, it's not as important as Donald Trump's last tweet, so it doesn't get any mention. But what I want to show, everywhere in the world we're seeing these massive droughts, every continent, and when these droughts finish, what we see is destructive rain events, short and destructive. And the other thing we are seeing as a result of droughts and warmer weather are more intense forest fires. You know, this week or last week in California, you know, actually one of our very good friends has lost his house in that fire. Actually, I've got a feeling there's a few other friends who have lost their houses. But the real thing is, for us as farmers, that these sort of extreme weather events are going to cause crop failure. And we need to prevent it. Tomorrow I'll talk about how we can build resilience to it. But I want to leave you with this, that the first major climate, that we call climate change event, is the Arab Spring. We've got the wars in Syria and Libya. They started because there were farming systems that had been consistently giving food for thousands of years, failed for the first time. And the people were without food, the governments didn't know what to do, and there ended up being food riots, and those food riots turned into rebellions against the government. And this is still going on, and those ones have caused millions of refugees, and we can't cope with that. Wait till we turn millions into hundreds, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. We do not have the resources in the world to deal with that. And this is why we need to prevent it. I think I want to get across to, you know, the seriousness. We are a few minutes to midnight in this. We do not have time to waste. There was a very major climate change meeting in September in California, put on by Governor Jerry Brown. The head of the United Nations came out, along with the United Nations scientists, showing that we actually have 2 years to turn this around to stop us going into, the word is catastrophic climate change. 2 years. And you know what they're saying is we have to halt all deforestation. We can't clear any more forests, and we have to start restoring and putting more forest in. So, you know, some of the things you're hearing about how we can actually have silvopastoral systems, or alley cropping with poultry. You know, these are parts of regenerative agriculture that we can make a difference. But really importantly now, the message has got across. We have to change the way we farm if we're going to survive. And so now actually I want to talk about the good news, because this is happening. You know, what we're doing over the next 2 days is the good news. We can talk about that this can be done, and I want to show you how easily it can be done. Firstly, in Paris, the most important agreement that was signed is called the 4 for 1,000. The most important global agreement that no one has ever heard of. What 4 for 1,000 means, if we could increase soil organic matter by 4 parts per 1,000 in the soil, we can reverse climate change. We can stop it. It's not much. And this initiative, there's now over 30 countries signed on. We have the major United Nations groups like the United Nations Food and Agriculture, IFAD, the Global Environmental Facility, which is the main funding mechanism for United Nations in Environment, the World Bank, CGIAR, IAR, the main group of United Nations or international agronomy soil scientists behind it now. We have hundreds of NGOs all around the world. So what I want to say now is that we actually do have a global initiative, and Regeneration International, we are actually central to this. We were only in Africa 2 weeks ago doing the first Pan-African event. We organized the first Latin American event in Mexico City and in Washington. So what I want to say here is that this is happening, and now I want to talk about making it doable. Regenerative agriculture, we have a lot of systems, and you'll see them all. There's not one size fits all. And what I'd like to say is we are an inclusive umbrella. It's not about which system is better. It's about there's a lot of systems, and we leave it up to farmers and land managers to look at which works best. But what I'd like to talk about is, can we stop climate change? Can we? Because what we have to do is take this 400 million parts out of the atmosphere. If we just went to renewables tomorrow, which is what people are pushing, we still will have more than 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. We still go into catastrophic climate change because there's a lag time from what's in the atmosphere, and it takes about 100 years for it to continue to heat up. We're leaving a dreadful legacy for our grandchildren if we do not turn it around. It's not keeping it as it is. We have to reverse it. Can we do it? Well, this is, let's look at the logic of what we're talking about soils. The biggest sink for carbon dioxide is the oceans. We have too much of it now. Carbon dioxide is acidic. It's killing the reefs here. It's killing the reef where I live in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef. It's the extra carbon dioxide is killing off and changing marine life. We cannot be putting any more carbon in the ocean or the atmosphere. Where do we put it? Well, if you look here, we have about 575 gigatons could be in forests at the moment. Maybe we could double that. But the atmosphere at the moment, we have around 900 gigatons. But the soil has almost 3 times the combination of what's in the atmosphere and what's in plants and forests. The soil is the biggest reservoir, and that is the logical place for us to put it. How much do we need to do? We really need around a bit, at the moment, it's a little bit over 2 parts per million going up, which is 17 gigatons a year extra is going up into the atmosphere. We need to pull out, just to stabilize, we need to pull out 17 gigatons a year. To reverse it, we need to start pulling out more than that so we can bring it down. Can we do it? So let's look at some of the regenerative systems. If I had the time, I could show you lots and lots. Like I said, we have numerous ways we can do this. That's what the good news is. Not one size. Numerous ways. Let's look at some of them. This is what we call pasture cropping. Instead of ploughing up the pasture and having bare soil, use modified no-till systems, and we don't spray it with poisons, and use holistic or rotational grazing to graze down the pasture, and then you sow the annual crops in it. These systems now, they don't use any fertilizers. In Australia, initially they had to use a little bit of phosphorus because the soils are deficient in phosphorus, but once they started, they don't use anything. They get the same yield of grains as their conventional neighbours do, using herbicides, pesticides, and tons of diesel, ploughing up and destroying the soil. And when they take the grain off, if you look underneath, you can see a nice green pasture. They can put their animals back on, so they get a second crop. They get double the income, and you imagine they're not spending a cent on ploughing, they're not spending a cent on fertilizer, they're not spending a cent on pesticides, their production costs are a fraction. So they're getting double the yield at a fraction of the cost. These are very profitable farmers. I want to show you this. This is you can actually see the amount of carbon put into the soil here. At the bottom, you can see they've actually increased the nutrients on the soils. Despite not putting fertilizers in most cases, they've got between 50 to 100% increase in plant available nutrients because the biology has done this. This myth that you have to buy fertilizers is a myth. It's a cruel myth because it actually destroys soils and destroys farmers' bank accounts. With these systems, you can build up fertility, just as Dr. Alvaro said. Their systems, they're not paying for fertilizer. Rahi's isn't. We can build it up and improve the soil, but they sequestered around 168, tons, 170 tons of carbon dioxide in 10 years. If we extrapolated that by, annually, by global farmlands, that's equivalent of sequestering 80 gigatons a year. Not the 17 we need, that's 80 in this system. This is another version of it here, where they've actually modified the planting equipment so it works better in pastures. And there they can do row crops and cover crops. And there's another system, he's not using any fertilizer, getting really high yields and getting both crops and raising cattle on these systems. He's done 11.7 metric tons per hectare per year, and he's actually being paid by the Australian government carbon credits for that. That's how it's verified. And if we extrapolate that, that's 60 gigatons a year. One of my favourites is by Dr. David Johnson from New Mexico State University. And this is an improved compost system. What I love about this, it can be done at any scale. You can do it on the smallest farm, in a backyard garden, through to, we could do it on thousands of hectares at Spanish Lookout. It doesn't matter how big your farm is, you can use this. This system gives incredible, dramatic increases in yield and in quality. That's one major benefit as well, at virtually no cost. There's a peer-reviewed article where, in a scientific journal where they've done just under 40 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare per year they've taken out of the atmosphere, put in the soil. If we were to extrapolate that, that's 184 gigatons per year we can take out of the atmosphere. And another favourite of mine is, and I think this is very applicable for here, is a 2-acre farm. I just hope this hasn't burned up because it's actually in the bushfire area in Chico, near where the fires in California are. That it's intensive, bio-intensive small crop system where they don't plough, they don't dig, they just lay compost over raised beds and plant directly in that. They get great yields. They're earning $200,000 US per acre on their 2-acre farm. That's $500,000 a hectare. That's productive. But if we were to, the amount of carbon they've sequestered, if we were to extrapolate that, that's 350 gigatons a year. Now this is a system that could work really well with small farmers here in Belize. The other one, Dr. Alvaro talked about rotational grazing and regenerative holistic grazing, and it is one of the best systems to restore ecosystems. And I'll talk more about these over the next few days, but now's not so much the time to talk about it. I just want to show you how they regenerate systems from degraded soil back to good ecosystems. The evidence shows that these are some of the most efficient at building up soil organic matter. and this is from one scientific paper looking at degraded lands in Arizona that they fixed up through the right grazing systems. And if we were to extrapolate that by the grazing lands around the world, that would be just under 100 gigatons, just by fixing up grazing and getting good grazing systems, like what we've heard from Dr. Alvaro. So I want to end on this, and this is to me the good news. You know, if we were just picking two of the systems, regenerative systems, best practice. Dr. Johnson's beam that can be applied on any land, anywhere, anytime, and just to convert 10% of agricultural land, get them to use beam. And I think that's very achievable. We're not talking about 100%, 50%, we're talking 10%. We could sequester 18.4 gigatons. That's more than we need to do, just with 10% beam. But if we also work with grazing lands, and we just change 10% of grazing lands to good systems, that's a further 9.8, just under 10 gigatons. So we're looking at just under 30 gigatons that we could sequester each year just by converting 10% of our agricultural practices to, you know, good regenerative practices. That not only will reverse climate change, in other words, we can reverse it and reverse it quite quickly. We'll also make these farming systems far more productive. We'll fix up the environment. We'll lower the production costs. The farmers will be far more viable. And we'll also talk about how we'll make them more resilient to the weather events of climate change. So this is win-win-win. And what I want to say here is that we don't need money on new science and special technologies. This is being done now. This is, you know, these are practices that are happening now. It's what is shovel ready. So I want to end on this is that, you know, all we need to do is train and teach farmers and help them, you know, adopt these practices. We can get 10% on the planet to do this. We win this battle and we have a future. So thank you.
Again, you will have a very dynamic session with him, so I hope everybody attends. At this point, I would just like to open the floor. If anybody is interested in asking anything specific, does anybody have any questions? We are welcome to ask. I would like to thank the Ministry of Agriculture, who has very generously allowed us to use their complexes. I see a lot of their staff is here. Thank you for attending. And I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful next 2 days. Does anybody have anything they would like to ask? Or anybody wants to contribute something else? As you can see, regenerative agriculture is nothing magical. We don't need anything additional than what we already have in our country. It's a mindset that we need to change. Every speaker we have is very emotional and dynamic of their own topic. One is cattle, the other one is poultry, the other is carbon sequestration. Personally, I'm about food security and eating local commodities that we have. And all the other presenters are going to be very into what they're talking about. And we in Belize, we have all of this going for us. We just need to work together, and we will achieve this great vision of regenerative agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture over many, many generations has done a wonderful job. Aquaculture is another topic that wasn't mentioned, but aquaculture is also another excellent topic for regenerative agriculture. We have tremendous water resources in Belize. We have wonderful rivers, a lot of lowlands, naturally occurring lagoons, lakes. We have the oceans that can be managed. Although I guess we manage them somewhat out there in Glovers and so forth. We have some reserves out there. But we can do, aquaculture is also another very, very good use of our natural resources that we already have. Historically, we have a very good background in poultry. I know hundreds, not one or two, but hundreds of of housewives, I'll use that term, although it might not be politically correct anymore, that are naturally extremely good at hatching chickens, for example. You go out from Corozal to Benqueviejo, all the way down to Jalacté, you will find poultry everywhere. Everybody has backyard chickens. We talk about it, but for some odd reason, we don't have it all together. But it can be done. These systems, as our friend here on poultry mentioned, different layers of production. In the southern Belize, we have the cacao people. In the valley, the Stan Creek Valley, we have the citrus people. We have the farmers in the cow district, the cattle farmers. They could all be grazing poultry also. And there's many different systems. These are our presenters, and does anybody have any specific questions for them? Are they that boring?
Yeah. The first time I got that question, yeah, the system I think I must remark, silvopastoral systems is the integration, grasses and trees. The definition doesn't say if the trees are going to be eaten or not by the animals. The Leucaena system is a silvopastoral system in which cattle eat the Leucaena, the Lucina plant. Is a system. The other system I show with Botón de Oro, the relative of sunflower. Yeah, cattle eat the flower, the plant itself. But the other system I show are the association between grasses and medium and tall trees. In those cases, cattle don't eat the leaves of the trees, and that system is absolutely suitable for horses. If horses is your main interest, or horses are your main activity, we need trees. It's important to remember that is to enhance soil fertility, and that point that mentioned by Andrew is to increase carbon in the soil.
I just want to follow on from Dr. Alvaro, because what you ask is a relevant question. In my case, I also ran a silvopastoral system, but I use mostly fruit trees. I do have some Leucaena and Inga, some of the plants he talked about, but I use them underneath the horses, for instance, and cattle and geese. What you find is that they all have different preferences, and sometimes it's better to actually have a diversity or run one after the other. But also in the case of my system, what the horses liked was the fallen fruit. And they just loved it. And when we were picking, they would follow us around. Or the seconds and stuff that we wouldn't take back to the shed, throw that out, and that was a treat for them. They loved it. So you can also, in those systems, put in trees that will feed the horses with fruit. Ingas, for instance, are a legume and ice cream beans. The horses actually love breaking them open, eating them. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually modify your system. So out of the silvopastoral system, you get fruit that you can sell, make money out of it, and at the same time, extra feed for the horses.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few things about human health. Herbivores were not designed by God or by the Mother Nature to eat genetically engineered grain that had been soaked in pesticides. Animals were not meant to be pinned up in concentration camps like in the United States in feedlots. Right now, today in the world, 70% of all farm animals are raised in these factory farms. And they're fed unnatural feed. They're drugged up because it's such hellish conditions. And look at what it does to the people. I mean, when you feed an herbivore, like a cow, you feed that herbivore grain, you know, thinking that you're going to make more money in the marketplace, and so you're going to do it. You're making the cow sick. After 5 days of eating grain, that healthy cow in their gut is going to start producing E. coli 0157, which is a pathogen, a germ that can kill you, you know, as a human. Okay? So, but it's not just the fact of E. coli and the poisonous things. You poison an animal, and then you eat that animal, you're getting poisoned too. I mean, why are so many people in the global north obese and fat? And why are heart attacks and heart disease our #1, you know, problem? Why does the United States spend $3.5 trillion a year on health care? $3.5 trillion. I mean, that's bigger than the entire economy of Central America and much of Latin America, just because Americans love cheap food and they don't think about animals, you know? It's like animals are human beings, or they're living beings. They're part of our heritage, of our evolution. You know, the cows are sacred, like the people say in India, you know, but all the animals are sacred. And if we don't start taking care of the animals, we're going to all die. And that's the way it is. And so I don't want to die of a heart attack before my time, so I will not eat one bite of meat that comes from a factory farm. I will not take one sip of milk from a factory farm. You know, and every chance I get, I try to tell farmers that once consumers understand that it's a matter of life or death, you know, to eat healthy food, and that healthy food has to come from healthy animals, which has to come from a civilization or a culture that has respect for something besides money, you know, our material goods, we're going to solve this problem. But let's not put it all on the farmers. Every time you pull out your wallet to buy a food product, you're either acting like a regenerator or a degenerator, you know? And we can change this, and we will change this. Thank you.
Talking about... He's almost here. The minister is almost here. We have a lot of these trees for these systems. For example, Mrs. Robinson mentioned what trees can go with horses in these systems. Well, everybody knows I'm a horse lover. We have one of the best trees of the whole of Central America, which is the Ramon. Ramon, we had an entire industry way before I was born, which was the chewing gum industry, the chicle industry. All those mules that were used to carry the chicle were fed on Ramon. We didn't have pastures. Pastures are relatively new to Central America. As a matter of fact, a lot of our grasses are from Africa. We just mentioned, we call out the grass name, but we don't really put it together. For example, Mombasa. Where do you think Mombasa is? It's in Africa. Tanzania. Where do you think Tanzania is? It's in Africa. So there's many grasses that we think are local, They're not really local. We have introduced them, which is a good thing. I'm not bashing the grasses. They're not at fault. But we do have a lot of these systems already exist. I'm happy that we have some foreign speakers that will motivate us to do these things. We have these things. We have a center just down the road, 20 minutes down the road, called Central Farm. They've had mulberry and Ramon and Seo de Oro, which is a sunflower. They've had it for centuries. Mr. Thompson there taught me, I think, in 1992. Fermin Blanco, who is at the back, even went before me, and those things were already there. But why have we not implemented them? Those are the questions. Why have we not implemented them? We all know about how great chaya is, for example, for human health, for poultry. Chaya is an exceptional forage, not only for human beings, but for animals. We can grow pigs. All our gastrics and monogastrics can grow on them. Why have we not done them? Why don't we take time and prepare our healthy meals? And I think regenerative agriculture is a system. It is not, as our friend said, it's not only about planting a tree here, planting a tree there, growing pigs, growing chickens, growing cabbages. It is a system of how we're going to switch our lifestyle. And that is what I hope we can take away after these 2 days. Any other questions?
We don't have questions. Maybe I can comment to Spencer. About organic matter, Andrew talked about the carbon in the soil. Carbon is organic matter. Organic matter is carbon. About 50% of organic matter of soil is carbon. And with our silvopastoral systems, we have a very good examples of a soil that was depleted from 4% organic matter, 4% to less than 2% organic matter, 1.8% of organic matter. And with the intensive silvopastoral systems, those farms, those plots are now about 4% again, without any use of chemical fertilizers, just the working with nature. And about the previous question of Beth, Andrew mentioned something about the trees. I have an example, a tree that is called Senna spectabilis. It's of the same family of Gliricidia sepium, of Albizia. Is a legume. It produces a lot of legumes, black ones, and horses love that fruit. And that fruit has a high content of protein, a high content of lipids, of fat, and it's very good for them. This it's just I would say in silvopastoral systems, we need a lot of imagination, and the benefits are going to be enormous.
Thank you very much. We actually have our minister here with us now. So Mr. Godwin is our Minister of Agriculture, and we're honored to have him here. He's a very busy man, as you can know. He's just coming from a cabinet meeting all the way from Belize City. That's a long drive. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. MC. Pleasant good afternoon to one and all. Good afternoon. I asked the MC if there's a protocol list, and he said, I am the protocol. That makes me really honored. But the truth of the matter is that agriculture people don't have protocols, because it is a 24-hour day, 7 days a week, 365 days occupation, and 366 on a leap year. As a consequence, we get right into it. So, pleasant good afternoon. I'm also guided by the fact that my wife and my daughter, who I see there, tells me that I should write my speech sometimes so I don't spend all the time talking, and I'm focused, but that is going to be a little difficult, so I'm going to try it. But I must recognize, first of all, my CEO, Mr. Alpuche, Miss Beth, somewhere there. There she is. My Chief Agriculture Officer, who I see in the back, my Research Director, Miss Enna, all the other people from agriculture, all the invited guests. I see Mr. Thompson back there. I see Mr. Novello. I see all the people from agriculture here, and so this is a good exercise. Thank you and welcome. It is indeed a pleasure to be invited by the organizing committee to make some remarks at the opening of this first, what promises to be, I understand, an annual tropical agricultural conference to convene over the next 2 days. While there will be several presentations by esteemed colleagues on various topics relevant to agriculture, to my mind, the one common theme is food production. Healthy food production. There is a myriad of issues affecting how we live and how we produce our food. These range from environmental concerns, sustainability of production, including the preservation of seeds and agronomic practices, climate change matters, economic issues, soil degradation, marketing challenges, that is getting food to people, and those are just to mention a few. The FAO agenda of eliminating hunger by 2030 is a challenging but an achievable goal. This will only be achieved, however, if we pool our resources and develop a coherent, concentrated effort to achieve it. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity must come first and replace profits as a first priority in our quest to achieving success. Let me repeat that. Humanity has got to come first and replace profits as a priority in a quest to achieving success. I say that because as we look around, and while the need exists to continue to produce food in mass scale, we must be careful and very careful that the drive for profit does not undermine the fundamental issue of preserving healthy lives. That has got to be the quest. This means, ladies and gentlemen, there must be a healthy balance in our purpose. Production at any cost, as well as preservation for preservation's sake without a purpose, is dangerous and damaging to our aims. While there are tons of food being thrown away daily, millions are also starving daily. But the point is really, what is the quality of the food being disposed of? Is it healthy? Is it produced sustainably? If not, then it is only a matter of time before we won't have any food to throw away, as we may very well find ourselves producing less and less nutritious food to sustain human life. Ladies and gentlemen, notwithstanding the various technologies available, which aim at high production in confined spaces, the fact is that land and water are the principal resources necessary for large-scale production. These are fast becoming scarce resources, with growing population, greater urbanization, reduction in rural lands, depletion of watersheds, increased salinity from rising sea levels, and soil degradation from overuse. In this country, particularly in the indigenous areas, the age-old practice of slash and burn farming, which utilized existing soil nutrients for crop production and rainfall for plant hydration, has now become challenging in terms of space availability to continue this practice and production sustainability. This calls then for continuing research in the area of crop production, encompassing all aspects of science, to ensure a continuous supply of healthy, nutritious food for humanity. The Ministry of Agriculture, our ministry, is focusing on food production, food processing, food preservation to ensure healthy food consumption. That is the shift we've taken, and that is our goal. At the World Food Day, I emphasized the fact that we want to make a slight shift from the established concept of agriculture, agrarian culture, which is misunderstood in many quarters, even in my own cabinet, where fighting for budgets to sustain agriculture becomes more difficult and more difficult as it is being replaced by the concept that tourism is one of the pillars of our economy, and service industries are another pillar. And I continue to maintain that there will be no tourism and no service industry and no manufacturing if we don't have food for people to eat. It is in this vein, then, that the ministry is looking at enhancing this. And with the able guidance of my CEO and his staff, we're looking at food preservation and food processing as the next level. And of course, that will lead to healthy food consumption. Because it is very easy to ask people, what business are you in? Are you in the business of farming? Heck no. Farming is a dirty thing. Rubber boots out in the bush with the bugs, etc. It's not a highly respected profession. Who wants to farm? And I've been at my wit's end to explain to the kids all the time why I, as a farmer, all my life, wear a necktie. I won't burden you with that one. But at least it gives some credibility to the issue of being able to be respected as a farmer. The truth of the matter is, though, everybody readily accepts I am in the business of food production. There's no question about that. And I'm in the business of healthy food production. So that is the push of our ministry. In this vein, then, we welcome this conference and support any initiative in agriculture/food production which may produce and promote the outcome of these objectives. As I reviewed the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is hunger, it states, it is time to rethink how we grow, share, and consume our food. If done right, agriculture, forestry, and fisheries can provide nutritious food for all and generate decent incomes while supporting people-centered rural development and protecting the environment. They go together. I am in a way fortunate to be the minister responsible for agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and the environment. So it is a huge task that we have to undertake. I'm supported by good people. Right now, our soils, freshwater, oceans, forests, and biodiversity are being rapidly degraded. Climate change is putting even more pressure on the resources we depend on, increasing risks associated with disasters such as droughts and floods. Here in our beautiful Jewel, I have experienced over time significant changes. I remember very well when I could say to you, there will be a cold front April the 14th for sure. That week there is going to be a cold front, and as a consequence, make sure the rice I planted was not flowering then. Or your mangoes or your cashew flowers would go. You can't predict that anymore. I could bet my life that any time from May the 21st, 24th to the end of May it was going to rain. That was for sure. And I was absolutely sure in the month of August it was going to be the Marga season. It would be dry. That is why we had even changed our school holiday period to those months so children could be out in the dry. I was dead certain that in the months of November right now there would be little fine rain coming down that would be cool, and we'll call it full man drizzle. It was very predictable, because you would not think it's raining, but you would go out there and be wet. Those were firm factors. I could tell you when the Belize River will flood, that will flood anytime towards the end of July. And there'll be another flood coming somewhere just before November. It was very predictable. This year, we had the highest rainfall in the month of January. Very unpredictable. As a consequence, beans and onions and potatoes and many other crops perished. That is unfortunate. But what it signals is that the environment, the climate has changed and is changing. And And with no disrespect and no intent to insult the most almighty power on earth, who has unfortunately withdrawn from the Paris Accord, I continue to maintain that I hope wiser brains prevail and that they reconsider that move. And I say that because for those of you who travel the Western Highway, you may want to stop by a place called Old Belize and look at the culvert right under where the water flows right from the fence of Old Belize. And 4 years ago, when my now deceased friend John Woods put in that culvert, the water was 4 inches from the gate, the water gate. I challenge you to go there now, anytime, and measure it, and you will see it is 2 inches. That is 2 inches of ocean rise already. And that is affecting us, and it's affecting many other places. So it is a real phenomenon. As we said, ocean tides, salinity in the Belize River. I did rise at Big Falls, mile 25 on the Western Highway, 47 miles from the sea. And over the years, we tested the salinity of the water to ensure that it was adequate to pump on rice. And we noted that the salinity was coming higher and higher, and it reached double run already, where we have the water being pumped for Belize City. The ppm is much higher there now than it was 5 years ago. And that salinity is moving up to boom, and it is moving further and further up. I had supported the Moyahon Dam because the fresh water being released would have suppressed the salinity a little bit. So as we pumped out of Big Falls, we'd have a little higher freshwater bank than we had previously. It is a real phenomenon. And for those of you who drink crystal water and any other water that's taken from the wells in that area, you will notice over time there's a little more brackish and a little more brackish taste. I say these things because not that they're scientific, and they can be. They can be the research into what the levels of salinity increases, but they're real observations based on real-time practices and real-time concepts, and they affect us properly over time. I could also tell you that there are more stink bugs in the rice fields than there used to be, and there are more armyworms as well, and these insects are temperature and time sensitive. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a challenge. Many rural men and women find it difficult to make ends meet on their lands, and this is from the UN, forcing them to migrate to cities in search of those opportunities. In Belize, we don't yet have that pressure, but we do see a movement towards the cities. And I see the city administrator here. Welcome, sir. And you will know that Belmopan today is not what it was 10 years ago. There's more and more people moving into Belmopan. So the city grows, and as the city grows, rural lands become less and less because unfortunately the land mass is not growing. And so there is more pressure on the limited land to produce more food for more people. That calls for a tremendous effort. Poor food security is also causing millions of children to be stunted, and it is predicted some of them are too short for their ages due to severe malnutrition. A profound change of the global food and agriculture system then is needed if we are to nourish 815 million people who are hungry today, it is predicted, and an additional 2 billion people expected to be undernourished by 2050. Fortunately, some of us, like myself, will give up my food by 2050. Investments in agriculture, ladies and gentlemen, are crucial to increasing the capacity for agricultural productivity, and sustainable food production systems are necessary to help alleviate the perils of hunger. This initiative by Regeneration Belize is timely and useful, and I congratulate you in advance. I congratulate all the presenters and the participants who will over the next few days share their experiences and expertise in this collective effort to ensure that here in this beautiful jewel of ours, we meet and surpass the Sustainable Development Goal of ensuring that no one goes hungry, but that everyone has access to healthy, nutritious food, and that even in a small way, we may be able to contribute to the world food basket. Ladies and gentlemen, may you have a great and successful conference and be engaged. Thank you all. God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Do we have any final words, Ms. Beth? We're done. So with the Minister's final words, we come to an end this evening, and I just hope that everybody will come tomorrow and participate at the different forums. There's some very dynamic speakers and a number of forums that I would like all of you to please participate. And bring as many people as you can. There's a lot of us that don't have vehicles. If you see them, please bring them. Thank you very much.